Okay, so we're going to record this for those that can't attend today. And I want to welcome everyone. I'm Leslie Zimmerman from the Alzheimer's Association, and I want to welcome you to our second Know Us Before You Need Us seminar. And this is just such a wonderful gathering of like-minded people, and we want to make sure that we gather together to discuss today what you might need to know as you prepare your journey with the legal and financial resources. We have great professionals that come to you from the East End. We have Lee Gordon and Debbie Walsworth, and we're just excited that we're going to give you information and tools, and then there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. You can try to stump the experts, and in addition to the legal and financial experts, we have the representatives from the Alzheimer's Association, and then our partners in crime here from that are helping us to put on this seminar from the Talbot Hospice. So Mia, do you want to talk about the great work that you're doing year-round around this theme about Know Us Before You Need Us?
Yeah, Know Us Before You Need Us started at the beginning of last year. And our sole purpose of Know Us Before You Need Us is to get out the information to people when they are not in a critical time in their life where making decisions and hearing all this information is so difficult. So our series has touched upon every aspect of hospice, palliative care, our bereavement program. We just did the 10 or 11 myths of hospice, so people can understand what they need to know in a passive way through stories, so that when they are in that moment, they can recall and say, okay, I do remember hearing this. I remember this, or, oh yes, that'll help me out. So we believe knowledge is power, which is, I didn't come up with that, obviously, but that the more knowledge you have, the more control you can try to have over a situation, and you might be able to navigate it, have an easier time of navigating it, and let us walk beside you and help you.
Thank you so much for giving us that kind of overview of the great work you're doing year-round. And just a little bit of housekeeping notes throughout the presentation. If you can keep yourself on mute, you can use the chat feature to ask questions, and we'll be monitoring that. We are going to have a Q&A towards the end of the series. And at that point, you can then unmute yourself, and we'll kind of have a Brady Bunch style approach where we're going to be able to see each other and have a great kind of community conversation at that point. And let's, Mia, do you want to introduce our speakers?
So our first speaker is Lee Gordon, and she is a lawyer with Parker Counts Law Firm. Lee is originally from Baltimore, Maryland, and she obtained her undergraduate degree in politics from Washington and Lee University, Williams School of Commerce, and graduated from the University of Baltimore Law School with honors. She served as a law clerk to the Honorable W. Newton Jackson III in the Circuit Court of Wicomico County. Lee has been an active volunteer for the Midshore Pro Bono and was awarded the organization's Young Attorney Award in 2009. Additionally, in 2015, Lee was honored with being named a Super Lawyer Rising Star and has been named to What's Up Eastern Shore's list of leading lawyers for 2014 and 2015. Lee has served as the president of the board for Christ Church Day School and as treasurer for the Baker King Fund. She is currently a member of the Talbot County Advisory Board for the Midshore Community Foundation and the Board of Trustees of the Country School, and she is also currently vice president of Talbot Hospice's board. And we love Lee. We absolutely love Lee. So you want to go ahead and speak, Lee, and then, or do you want me to introduce both of them at the same? I'll introduce Deborah next. Or do you want me to introduce Deborah now? Lee, I mean,
do you want to do it? Why don't we? I'll do a presentation, then you can introduce Debbie.
Okay? Let's go ahead and do that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everybody. It is such a pleasure to be here with you all. As Mia said, this is a like-minded group. Certainly, I'm an estate planning and estates and trust attorney. I've worked with hospice, the Alzheimer's Association for, many years and think so highly of all the work they do. So today, my presentation is going to focus on making sure you have the appropriate legal documents in place. A large percentage of my clients, either themselves or their loved ones, face dementia or Alzheimer's. And we also often talk about sort of the gray area of dementia and Alzheimer's and capacity issues. Certainly it's not like somebody wakes up one day, of course, and loses legal capacity. So the key is making sure we've planned in advance for these types of situations. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we have a presentation I'm going to walk through with you all. So, again, we're going to touch on both the legal and financial planning aspects of making sure we're prepared for a loved one or ourselves facing a hurdle like dementia or Alzheimer's. The learning objectives of this presentation is to make sure we understand the importance of advanced planning, to identify steps to getting the legal and financial future care plans in place, to become familiar with specific legal issues, future care options, and financial issues pertaining to dementia, and to provide some hands-on tools for making plans now. As I said, it's extremely important to make sure that we get these documents in place early. One of the things that a lot of my clients say when we talk about powers of attorney and appointing healthcare agents is, well, I don't need these agents now. I can make these decisions now, but I always try to explain to them that what the key is that we make sure we get the documents in place well ahead of time, because if we don't, we're going to face huge hurdles like legal guardianships, and other very expensive hurdles in order to have people in place to make decisions for you. Again, the goals of legal planning is to make plans for healthcare for the long term and make sure the management of your finances and to put individuals in place to assist you with those finances. So we'll start, usually when I do estate planning for clients, we're talking about 3, maybe 4 documents: wills, powers of attorney, and advanced medical directives. So a lot of people know advanced medical directives as healthcare powers of attorney or living wills. My firm uses one document that combines 2 things together. First, a healthcare power of attorney. So this appoints an individual to assist with making healthcare decisions for you. Our document says if 2 physicians say that you're not capable of making decisions. And then the second part of the document is the living will. So the living will portion of the document, many of us know, says that if you're in one of 3 conditions, persistent vegetative state, end stage condition, or imminent death, that you no longer want medical intervention. Most of my clients, but not all, also prefer not to receive nutrition or hydration if they're in one of those conditions. I will say that that is one of the things I see altered most frequently. There are some religions that have a preference that their parishioners receive nutrition and hydration when they're in those stages. But some of my clients are worried that that would keep them alive unnecessarily. So these are difficult topics to discuss for some people. But again, it's really advantageous to have these discussions ahead of time, to communicate with your loved ones about what your wishes are. That will relieve the burden for them when they need to make those decisions for you. The other document that a lot of our clients need to have in place is a MOLST form. This stands for Maryland Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. This is a doctor's order. So, while I provide this form to a lot of my clients so that they can familiarize themselves, I do not fill out the document with my clients. It needs to be filled out with preferably the primary care physician, again, in a controlled setting, not in an emergency. But basically, the first page is the replacement for what we all know as a DNR, a do not resuscitate order. When certain of my clients get into a certain stage in life, they do not want to be resuscitated if they were to be, were to need it in an emergency situation. So some clients want that DNR order in place. The back page also tells, a hospital or the EMTs what kind of treatment they would want in certain situations. So, it's a little confusing for clients how the advance directive and the MOLS form interact. But what I am telling clients is that they need to have both, particularly as they get older. The MOLS form is required if you are a resident in an assisted living facility, a nursing facility, or if you are hospitalized. But again, I want my clients to fill that out well before, they have to be admitted to a facility so that they have time to review that form and really think about the answers. A durable financial power of attorney is also an extremely important document. This document, while it scares some of my clients, they feel like they're giving something up. I always point out to the clients, that really there's always a leap of faith with these documents. The most important thing to me is that you trust the people that you name, but that it's really important to have a broad, essentially blanket financial power of attorney, because the issue is we can't anticipate what we need to do for you if there was an event, if you were to become incompetent. There are two types of powers of attorney. It can be springing, meaning it's not effective unless two physicians have rendered you incompetent, or it can be effective immediately. For most of my clients, particularly as they get older, I strongly encourage them to actually have the power of attorney effective immediately, because getting two doctors to sign off on incompetency is actually harder than that sounds. Doctors are busy, they have busy practices, it's hard to get them on the phone. It could be an unnecessary hurdle for a loved one to be able to say, pay bills for you, contract with caregivers to come in and help you. So again, in my opinion, it's really important to have a power of attorney that's not going to create a hurdle for the people that are trying to help you. The story I often tell with my clients is I had a client who was sending $30 to every charity that sent them something in the mail, which you and I both know, if you do that, you're going to get, 100 mailings of charities that want money from you. And unfortunately, to the tune of thousands of dollars going out of this person's bank account. And we could not, her power of attorney was only effective if two physicians rendered her incompetent. And while we thought there were concerns about her abilities to handle her affairs, we couldn't get her rendered incompetent. So we really couldn't get control of the situation. Eventually we came up with a way to work around it, but that's the type of thing that, we don't want to look back and think, oh, we really should have made this easier on the child or the spouse or whomever is assisting. A will. It's always important when we talk about wills to make sure we understand what wills actually control. Wills only control assets that are in our individual name at the time of our death that do not have beneficiaries on them. So things like IRAs, life insurance, annuities are typically controlled by beneficiary designation. Wills often control real estate in people's individual names, taxable investment accounts in people's individual names, bank accounts, stock, bonds, things like that. So a will, of course, tells, it it disposes of our assets at the time of our death and appoints an executor to handle your affairs. I do work with clients often on who they should name as executor. Maryland calls executors personal representatives, so you likely have seen that term if you have a will. But, you know, really, again, oftentimes this is the person that has served as the financial power of attorney. It does not have to be. But if you trust the person to assist while you're alive, it's often that you would trust that person to assist after you're deceased. It's often family members. It does not have to be family members. But, you know, it is very important to have a will in place. A lot of times people say, well, I don't have enough money to have a will. Sometimes it's almost more important for the people without a lot of money to have a will, because the hassle and the stress that your family has to go through to dispose of maybe, you know, a minor amount of assets if you don't have a will can actually be that much more troublesome. And it's, you know, there might not be enough to pay an attorney to help you through that process. So it's really important to have a will in place, really to help your family in the future. A living trust. So a lot of our clients come to talk to us about revocable living trusts. And I do a lot of revocable living trusts for clients. Some clients have been through the probate process and, you know, it took a long time and it was expensive. I often come right out and say it with my clients, you know, that the number one expense with the probate process is often attorney's fees. So, you know, what a revocable living trust does is it becomes the owner of the assets while you're alive. And the trust says, while you're alive, you're the trustee. But if you become incompetent or deceased, you name a successor to automatically move into a position of control over your assets so that you don't have to go through the courts to get control of the assets. And so that helps, first of all, speed up the administration of the estate, but also it helps reduce the reporting requirements to the Register of Wills or the Orphans Court, so that your assets, A, don't become a matter of public record, and B, you don't have to pay me to track every dividend that comes in and out of the account. So revocable living trusts are really important planning tools to make sure that, you know, your assets are ultimately distributed to your family in the most efficient way possible. Not all of my clients choose to undertake revocable living trusts. They just don't want that complication for themselves. But one of the biggest things with revocable trust is making sure you get the assets retitled now, before somebody dies. The assets have to be owned by the trust. Or we could have a client who's, you know, paid for a revocable trust, and if the assets are still in his or her name, you're going to still have to go through probate in order to get them in the trust. You know, it is important to, you know, to put a care team in place. You know, I often think about it as sort of, you know, a triangle, but maybe it's more like a, you know, a circle. You know, your estate planning attorney, your investment advisor, your accountant, your doctor, you know, and, you know, so that you have a team around you, there's continuity and communication among the team to make sure that nothing is missed. You know, there are ways that, and this does happen in families where there's disagreements about, you know, care for mom or dad, or whether or not, you know, he or she is really ready to go into an assisted living facility, or, and there are ways to mediate and work through those issues. There are certified mediators out there that can assist families, you know, and unfortunately, if we can't get to a point of resolution, sometimes we're in the circuit court getting guardianships over clients. So, but again, that would be something we would try to avoid if at all possible. So guardianship often comes, you know, financial powers of attorney and advanced medical directives. The reason for them is really to avoid a court-ordered guardianship, frankly. Guardianships are extremely expensive. You often need an attorney to represent you in order to petition for a guardianship. And then the court also has to appoint an attorney for the alleged disabled. So you're paying 2 attorneys to get through that process. And then everything, all the finances of that individual become a matter of public record, and you have to make reportings. So again, a very invasive process, time consuming. We are filing for guardianship, unfortunately, for a client right now who did not have any documents in place. And he unfortunately has an aggressive form of dementia and is now in a nursing home. But we're in the middle of going through a guardianship with him. And with COVID, we originally filed for the guardianship in late February, and our hearing is in June. So it is a very long and time consuming and expensive process. Legal capacity. So legal capacity is something that clients worry about fairly regularly. And it is an important, issue. So legal capacity is a determination by a judge or court about somebody's ability to handle their affairs. Competency is something that a doctor would determine. These are things that we struggle with, with clients that are older. There are times where I ask clients to get a letter from their doctor that says that they are competent to sign documents. That's assurance for them. And it's also assurance for me, if there was a legal challenge in the future to the documents. That's not that often, but sometimes it's, it is nice to have it in the file. Again, dementia, Alzheimer's, there certainly being a gray area as far as legal capacity. A diagnosis of dementia does not actually mean necessarily that the person does not have legal capacity. They could, but it does not alone mean that person does not have legal capacity. It's really important. This slide is sort of addressing, making sure that couples plan together. We do a lot of planning for second marriages. Often the concern is one spouse dies, leaves everything to the surviving spouse, and then that surviving spouse leaves everything just to his or her children, disinheriting the other spouse's children. So we do a lot of planning for second marriages. We do a lot of planning for people that are unmarried. Obviously, extremely important to have a will if you're in a long-term partnership and want to benefit that partner, but you're not legally married. So those are just things to think about. So steps for putting legal documents in place. These are some websites that can give you assistance and help you determine what documents you need. Sometimes I have clients say, well, my situation is so straightforward. Can't I just print a will off of the internet? I'm sure Debbie's seen some of these in her practice before as well. I'll be honest, I've administered 3 legal Zoom wills that you can print off the internet, and every single one of them had an error in them. They weren't errors that we couldn't overcome with certain things, but usually getting a simple will in place is really not that expensive. I think clients are usually relieved when they find out, but it is just really important to get that in place. This is my contact information. So I think we're going to do questions at the end. Is that right? Okay. So I am going to mute, and Mia, you're going to jump back in, right?
Okay, I would like to introduce Deborah Walsworth. Debbie Walsworth is the managing partner of BSC Group LLC, an independent public accounting firm located in Easton, Maryland. She has over 30 years of experience in public accounting, and during that time has developed a diverse client base consisting of individuals, businesses, trusts, estates, and retirement plans. She provides tax compliance and consulting services, including financial and retirement benefit planning. She holds the designation of CPA, CFP, Certified Financial Planner, and CPC, Certified Pension Consultant. She obtained her BS in accounting from Wilmington University and her MS in taxation through the University of Baltimore. Debbie currently serves on the Talbot County Economic Development Commission, is the immediate past chairman of the board of directors for the Talbot County Chamber of Commerce, and is a member of the Planned Gifts Committee for the Memorial Hospital Foundation. And coming in July, Deborah will be a part of the Talbot Hospice Board also, and we welcome her. You're muted, yeah.
Thank you, Mia. So my section of the presentation, Lee's gonna keep sharing her screen, I hope, to show the slides. And I'm gonna review the financial issues that are associated with any kind of a long-term care situation. I think this is a major concern for most people. And again, similar to needing the legal documents, it's helpful to have a financial plan for the situation as well. The critical fact is actually how are you going to pay for care? I always think of it as three separate, I don't think I can advance. Can you advance a slide, Lee? Thank you. So the critical issue is how do we pay for care? And when I think of it, I think of three separate buckets. One is personal resources. A second one is long-term care insurance. And then the third one is some combination of medical care, governmental assistance, those types of programs. When you're thinking of paying for care, you have to consider, even at the very beginning, what level of care you're going to need and have some awareness that if you start with one level initially, which can be as simple as having someone come into the home for a few hours a day, that can escalate until you have a need for 24/7 care, and may or may not need that in some kind of a controlled environment. So the first step in looking at how you pay for care is to evaluate your personal resources. And those include, if someone is still working, it can be income from employment, retirement plans, any savings or investment accounts, anything that you have that is a financial asset that can be liquidated to provide cash for paying for the care that your family member may need. The second two items on this slide, a reverse mortgage is a very specific product, and then we'll talk more about long-term care insurance. Basically, what happens with a reverse mortgage is it's the opposite of when you take out a mortgage. When you take out a mortgage, you borrow money that you then pay back. A reverse mortgage is where you essentially borrow out the equity in your home and you do not have to pay those funds back. So it allows you to take your home and the equity in it and turn it into a cash asset without, in most cases, without leaving the home. It's designed for people who are at least 62 years old. And in many cases, it's I don't want to say it's a last resort, but it's something you have to seriously consider before you do it. Will not affect your Social Security or Medicare benefits, and you do not have to repay these payments. So the cash that you receive from your reverse mortgage is tax-free, and you can use that any way you would like to. You do need to check with, I just suggest either an attorney or an accountant, because it can affect governmental program eligibility, and there are specific costs associated with a reverse mortgage. A particular caveat would be to be careful of a sole homeowner. So one person living in the home who stays in assisted living or nursing for over a year, because in that case, the balance on the loan has to be repaid and you could effectively, lose the home. So that's a critical potential disadvantage that you would want to make sure you take a look at before moving into a reverse mortgage. The second, what I call bucket of items that can provide for care, is long-term care insurance. And there are many types of policies available, but essentially long-term care is an insurance. It's an insurance product that you pay a premium for, can be over a lifetime. You can have a 10-pay product if you buy long-term care insurance while you're working and you buy it in a C corporation, it's actually deductible. But when you purchase the insurance, you define things like how much of a daily benefit do I need? How long will benefits be paid? What kind of care will it cover? Sometimes there can be a tax implication. Generally, most of these qualified policies, it's not taxable when received. And you want to make sure that someone with Alzheimer's is covered. Basically, most long-term care is written, and I've been adding these up on my fingers and I can't come up with the last one, but it's, you either have 2 activities of daily living that you can no longer meet, or you have a cognitive issue. And the activities are things like eating, bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring. But in the situation with Alzheimer's or any kind of a cognitive impairment, dementia, that in and of itself is enough to generally cause the long-term care insurance to provide for benefits. You can get things supplemented a little bit as you're paying for care. I mean, it is not unusual for me to have had a client for 30 years and they've paid significant taxes throughout their lives. And then all of a sudden, the expenses of medical care are so large that they don't have a taxable income any longer. You do have a medical deduction for medical supplies, in-home care, nursing services, assisted living, nursing home care, prescriptions. All of this comes under a medical deduction. And to the extent that your medical expenses exceed 7.5%, it fluctuates, but it's been 7.5%, it's going to 10% of your income, then that provides a federal tax deduction. But in situations where significant care is required, it's not unusual to totally wipe out taxable income. Similarly, the state, Maryland specifically, follows the federal. They also allow the medical deduction. There also is a deduction the first year that you buy long-term care insurance. There is a credit on your individual tax return. And in certain situations, there can be other credits at the state level that are involved. I think many people, in addition to considering, assisted living and paid care group givers, it seems like when there is someone in need, much of the care begins somewhat informally through family members, friends, neighbors, support groups in the community, volunteer groups. Issues develop as the care becomes more involved and the needs are greater as far as the resources that might be needed as things progress. One item that people consider as far as programs that are available to help is Medicare versus Medicaid. And it's like anything else, it's an acronym. The last 2 letters are different on these things, and unless you work with it all the time, it's very easy to get them confused. But Medicare is a government insurance program, and it's age-based, it's federally administered. It does not pay for long-term nursing home care. So when you are first eligible, when you turn 65, you're immediately eligible for Medicare, which provides some health insurance coverage. Medicaid, on the other hand, is a government assistance program rather than an insurance program, and it is needs-based. Even though it's a federal program, it is state administered, and it will pay for long-term nursing home care. as I said, to be eligible for Medicare, if you're 65 or older, it is the federal health insurance. People who are under 65, some disabilities can be covered under Medicare, and anyone who is in end-stage renal disease is eligible for Medicare coverage. Medicare essentially has three parts. Part A is hospital insurance that you do not pay anything for. Part B is medical insurance, and if you're receiving Social Security on your Social Security form, you'll see a deduction for Part B. And Part D, some people have that coverage and some do not. More have it as time goes on, and that does help with some prescription drug discounts. The Part A hospital insurance is really your inpatient care in a hospital. It also, for short, I think Lee's going to go into a little more details on that, but for short-term rehabilitation, as long as you have a plan where you're receiving care that's leading to improvement, it's not a maintenance program. Medicare will cover skilled nursing care, does cover home health care, and it also covers hospice care. As I said, you're automatically signed up at 65 for this hospital insurance piece. If you're under 65 and have been receiving Social Security disability income for 24 months, you're eligible for Medicare. And this is the part, Medicare Part A. This is the part that does not have a premium. You may have some co-payments, but you're not paying anything for this coverage. Medicare Part B covers physician services, outpatient things like labs, equipment, whether it's home equipment or walkers. And you, again, are automatically covered under Medicare Part B in the same way that you were covered under Medicare A, but there is a monthly premium. I think for the average person this past year, the Medicare pass-through for Part B was $1,735. I've just finished looking at a bunch of tax returns, so I'm pretty sure that's the right number. With Parts A and B, the things that are not covered are dental care, cosmetic surgery, acupuncture, hearing aids, and the big thing that's not covered under Medicare A and B is long-term care. So if it's custodial care, it will not be covered under the Medicare hospitalization provisions. And that's what generates such a need to understand and have a plan financially for long-term care, because it's not covered in the same way that most of your other illnesses and treatments are as you get older. Medicare Part D helps lower the cost of prescription drugs. You have to be covered under Part A or Part B. There is a penalty if you don't enroll at certain timelines, and there is a charge for the Medicare prescription drug coverage. Medicare Advantage is a combination. It's a private pay plan, like something an insurance agent would have. It's called Medicare Advantage Part C. It combines all of these parts and does have some monthly premiums. I don't see this very often. I typically see people electing into Medicare and then doing what a future slide talks about, which is to supplement the Medicare coverage with Medigap. Because you've got some holes as to how many hospital days are covered and what the copay is, there are Medicare supplement plans. We call it gap insurance through agencies like AARP and then private insurance agents that help you fill in the gaps of your Medicare insurance. It still will not cover long-term care. To have long-term care insurance coverage, you would have to purchase a specific long-term care policy. I'm going to turn it back to Lee to talk a little bit more about some issues that relate to Medicaid and the reason for that and the actual coverage of Medicare.
So, I wanted to touch briefly on what we call elder law, but what a lot of clients know as Medicaid planning. This is the concern that we have a loved one that needs to go into a long-term care facility, nursing facility level of care, and that they don't have the resources to pay for it. The average cost of care in a nursing facility in Maryland is about $10,000 a month. So it is very difficult to sustain that for a lot of our clients over time. So, Medicare does cover the first 20 days at a nursing facility. So the scenario for a lot of clients is there was an illness or a fall, the person was then hospitalized, that person is then discharged into a nursing facility, and Medicare will pay for the first 20 days of rehab. As long as the individual is progressing with their rehab, Medicare will pay for up to 100 days, so from 21 to 100 days with a daily copay. Your supplemental health insurance would likely assist with that copay. The issue becomes after that 100 days. So for some of my clients who go into the rehab facility, unfortunately, they come to a point in their care where they're either not progressing in their rehab, or they've gone beyond the 100 days, and the family is then told, sometimes quite suddenly, he's going to be private pay at $300 plus a day. And so clients come to me with, grave concerns about, are we going to have to sell the house or the farm? Are we going to have to liquidate the IRA? Are we going to have to become penniless to pay for their care? And so, Medicaid is the benefit. Maryland calls, Medicaid is the federal program. Maryland calls Medicaid medical assistance. It's a federal program administered by the state. And it's a two-pronged test, whether or not an individual would qualify for Medicaid. Do they require nursing facility level of care, which means their care has to be overseen by a nurse. That's determined about the number of activities of daily living the individual can do for him or herself. And does the individual qualify from an asset or income base? So clients are really coming to me to help with the financial aspects of the planning. And so there are some misconceptions, as I said, with the elder law planning. And some of those common misconceptions are that you have to sell your home in order to qualify for benefits. There are a number of ways, particularly with married couples, that we can exempt certain resources, the primary residence being the most important and valuable resource. We can exempt from being counted as a countable resource for the purpose of Medicaid planning. A lot of clients believe that they're going to have to pay that $10,000 a month to the nursing facility. Again, a lot of clients, even middle income, families will qualify for Medicaid coverage with the proper planning. It's also a misconception that it would be guaranteed that if you ran out of money, that Medicaid will automatically kick in. There is a fairly extensive application when you apply for Medicaid, and you have to basically provide 5 years of financials. So if you gave away all your money within that 5-year period, and then you ran out of money, you're going to be hit with a penalty. The state will not allow you to give away your money, and then they will kick in and pay for your care. So that's when we're in a situation where we have to maybe have assets returned to the client. So if you're planning on making substantial gifts to family, and there is a concern about how you would pay for your care, that all needs to be done with the assistance, in my opinion, of an elder law attorney, financial advisor, accountant. Make sure that you are, running your plans through, because it's difficult to undo a gift once you've made it. But we want to make sure that we have a way to pay for your care. Also, often clients say, well, Mom's doing really well at the assisted living facility. We'd like to keep her there, but she's going to run out of money. Unfortunately, there is no government benefit program for assisted living. You know, and again, we talked about preserving the home. You know, income is only one factor when applying for Medicaid. You know, the other factor is really what the assets are, what available assets are. You know, you do have to spend down. You've probably heard the term Medicaid spend down. Again, I would not necessarily recommend anybody undertake a spend down for Medicaid without the assistance of an advisor. But you do apply for Medicaid through the Department of Social Services in Maryland. This is a chart that just walks through you know, what the countable resources are for a single individual or a married couple. You know, cash in the bank, cash, bank accounts, investment accounts, IRAs, cash value of life insurance. And again, if you're married, they're looking at the couple. It doesn't matter if the assets are in his name or her name or joint names. They're considering you as one unit. It also doesn't matter if you have a prenuptial agreement in place that says, I'm not responsible for his debts or expenses. Medicaid is still going to look at you all as a unit. However, with a married couple, there is some very substantial planning that can be put in place to essentially shelter almost all of the assets for the what we call the community spouse, the individual who's remaining in the community, you know, when there's a loved one, when the other spouse is in the nursing facility. So the key takeaway here is, particularly for married couples, if there's an individual that needs to go into a nursing home, that you seek advice ahead of time. There's something called a Medicaid compliant annuity that is still available in Maryland, that you can basically take an asset, say an investment account worth $200,000. You could liquidate that, understand there would be some tax consequences potentially that we need to work through with your accountant. But then you can take those funds and purchase something called a Medicaid compliant annuity that would pay back. It converts an asset to an income stream to the community spouse. So basically, we're taking an asset that's rendering your loved one ineligible for Medicaid, and we're converting it to an income stream. That will guarantee that that benefit, well, it will help ensure that that benefit will help the community spouse. You know, because one of the concerns is we want to make sure there's assets there to help take care of that spouse. We don't want you both impoverished. So there are ways, again, to protect assets for our long-term care. Again, married couples having the largest advantages there. So a couple pitfalls of elder law planning. Unfortunately, I am deeply involved in one of these situations right now. The client does not have a power of attorney in place. So when we're doing a Medicaid spend down, there's, you know, assets are being retitled, they're being converted, they're being transferred. Almost impossible to do, virtually impossible to do without a legal power of attorney or guardianship in place. And in this instance, the lack of the power of attorney is causing a delay of about 4 or 5 months. So again, that just emphasizes how important it is to have these documents in place ahead of time. Lack of advanced medical directive. Second marriage, I talked about pre and post-nuptial agreements, really not, you know, not mattering in the medical assistance application world. You know, you're still looked at as a unit. And then there are instances where clients have been, you know, well, married couples have been estranged or they don't live together, but they never get divorced. And then one of them needs to apply for Medicaid. Well, that other spouse is still going to be counted for the purposes of that application. So I am going to send it back to Debbie. And okay.
And I'm just going to go over a couple of more. These are a little bit more obscure issues, but if you are a veteran, that is one of the first places you should check. Veterans have additional benefits that sometimes they're not aware of, but it includes medical insurance, health insurance, the pension, the VA pension, there's a death pension, housebound benefit, burial and final expenses. So you really, if you are a veteran, you need to get in touch with the VA to make sure that you or your family member are taking advantage of all of the things that are available to you. The other thing that's happening as you know, we're seeing dementia earlier, is you want to also explore all of the options you have with respect to your current employment. You know, sometimes people will feel like they need to leave employment maybe more quickly than they should. They need to take advantage of either short and long-term disability. Many employers now offer long-term care coverage, either typically on a voluntary basis. You have loan options from your retirement plan, and then there are federal, depending on the size of the employer, the family medical leave may apply, personal leave applies. And so you really need to investigate all of your options. And I think as part of that circle that Lee talked about, communicating with your employer is, you know, as important as bringing in, whether you are the person needing care or you have an issue with a spouse. You don't want to not investigate anything that can potentially be a resource. And on the employment side, there is a planning process you can go through here as well, you know, which involves documenting things from your physician, but it is just another entity that you need to consider communicating with. One issue that we are seeing more and more in the medical community is this younger onset dementia, early Alzheimer's. You have lots of different terminology, but you can actually qualify for Social Security disability benefits. It's based on age, employment history, and the severity of a disability. When you qualify for it in this way, if you can also potentially qualify for SSI, which is you don't look at employment history. So often Social Security similarly has programs that would be available and is another resource that you should check with if you're, you know, encountering these types of issues. I think with that, we're at a final slide that gives you a number of different resources, and I'm going to turn it back, I think, to Cindy.
Yeah, hi, Debbie. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much. First of all, Lee and Debbie, there was so much information that you shared. So thank you so very, very much. If anyone wants me to send you these very detailed PowerPoints, I'm happy to do that. I have this email, it's a work in progress. But you can't see me very well, but I have a walk t-shirt, a Walk to End Alzheimer's t-shirt on today with a Maryland crab on it. And I am Cindy Prudhomme. I work for the Alzheimer's Association as an education coordinator here, and I live in Easton. And I did want to share a few things about the slide that was up a minute ago, but it just about some of our programs. And you're going to receive this in a nice PDF version. That we have a lot of wonderful things on our alz.org, which is our website. In fact, I put a link in your email that you'll get from me today directly to financial and legal resources that are on our website. So, you know, you can kind of scroll down and see what pertains to you. You'll see this ALS Navigator is a system that sort of leads you to, sometimes you don't know what you might need to know. And it gives you some questions, and based on your answers, it'll share with you some information you need to think about, like if it's healthy living resources, or if you've answered that it's caregiver stress that's really bothering you the most, or paying for service, so it's going to kind of there's lots of different questions, and it will give you some resources around that. Our community resource finder is a place where you can go and put in your zip code and find out local attorneys or local financial folks, or different kinds of assisted livings, or like whatever resource you're looking for, including our events that we offer like this. ALZ Connected is wonderful. It's alzconnected.org. It's a great place to go as a caregiver or a person living with Alzheimer's or dementia. You would create a username and a sign in, and then you have a message board. So if you have questions, you can ask and get information from people who are walking the same walk as you. It's just a nice way to reach out to other folks who are in your same shoes, if you will. And then we have caregiving, all kinds of great caregiving information. The 800 number, 1-800-272-3900, is 24 hours. You get a trained professional who has time to hear what your concerns are. They're not distracted. We're open at 3 a.m. and we've had people call us, from their master closet, like my mother, I just said the wrong thing I'm so afraid I said the wrong thing to my mom. I feel really guilty. We can walk you through that, or other resources on the fly, and just basic stuff like helping you find out about our webinars and register for programs. We have a lot of support groups. Most of them with COVID have been virtual, although we are thrilled to be loosening that up and coming back into person. So I'm going to send you a list about local support groups throughout the state. And the reason I include the ones, we have some that are designed for individuals with early onset, what we would consider younger onset, under 65. Dementia, or someone that has a Lewy bodies, or what we call frontal temporal lobe dementia, which is a dementia that really behaves very differently than Alzheimer's. It has a lot of behavioral issues because it's the temporal lobes that sort of are our executive functioning and keep the lid on things, and sometimes the language gets different and whatnot. So please look to us. You can always watch any training program that we offer is available 24 hours a day. So if you just want to dive a little deeper, we have a lot of great things on YouTube as well. And, we're always looking for folks to want to help us spread the word about what we do. People do also call us and want to talk to someone about what we call a care consultation. And that can be very lengthy, from 30 minutes to an hour, and sometimes more than one session, to find out resources and exactly how we can be the most help for your individual family situation. And Leslie is going to speak to maybe just in general, take us back to a little bit about what she does for the organization. Please feel free to throw any questions you might have in the chat, or get ready to unmute yourself, because we'd love to see how you're doing and whether we've addressed what you're, most of what you're interested in. And I do want to say that Mary Sellers is on the call as well. I'll point her out in a second.
So hi, everyone. I'm Leslie Zimmerman, and one of the main things that I do is I oversee some of our great events that people are able to come together and share about their journey with Alzheimer's. And one of our signature events is the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which is occurring on Saturday, October 30th this year. We'll be offering a virtual option and also an in-person option this year, which we're excited about. And usually that might be the first step that people take in their journey and their introduction to the Alzheimer's Association. It's an opportunity to come together, to share stories, and to learn more about the association. That's one of the places where I started my journey as a volunteer, as a walk team captain, when I found out that my father had vascular dementia, and I started taking advantage of resources. That's how I became involved with the organization. And look at me now, I'm now an employee and a great ambassador. There are wonderful ways that anyone can become more involved with the organization, from being an educator, being a walk team captain, raising funds for the organization, or being an advocate, helping us to get important legislation passed at the state and local level. So if you're ever interested in how you can become more involved, please reach out to either Cindy or myself, and we'll get you connected to those opportunities. And I think at this point, we want to make sure that we get your questions answered today. And you can put them in chat, unmute yourself. Mia, do you want to introduce your colleagues that are on the call today?
Yeah, I just wanted everybody to know that Molly Kirsch, who is our clinical director, is also on this call. That if you have any questions for hospice, there she is. She's happy to answer them. And Laura Richson, who is my colleague, who is helping us put on this series and is an integral part of this team. So, but Molly is also on to answer questions. So we have Molly, we have Lee, and we have Debbie. And I actually have a question. If I can start, I have really, I wrote it down just as when Lee was talking. Lee, you said something about long-term relationships, somebody who's not married. And if the person hasn't been designated in the will, if they've been living together for a long period of time, can that spouse claim common law marriage?
So Maryland does not have common law marriage. DC does, but Maryland does not. Maryland would only honor it if, say, the common law marriage was legally formed in DC and then they move to Maryland. Maryland will honor that.
Got it.
I actually have clients that are in that situation. We've done an affidavit of the common law marriage that was formed in DC with the timeline, et cetera. And Maryland will recognize it, but we do not have common law marriage here. So that's two difficulties. One is if you die without a will, you're not in the line of succession.
Right.
Two is inheritance tax, because Maryland charges an inheritance tax based on the relationship of the beneficiary to the decedent. So that individual could have to pay 10% inheritance tax. For domestic, for qualified domestic partnerships, is a way to exempt the home from that tax. That was originally, it could be a single sex couple that hasn't married. It could be a heterosexual couple, but there is a way to qualify the home for that exclusion. But
got it. Fascinating. Thank you. That really has popped up when you were saying it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's such a good question, Mia. I know my family has my parents live in Florida, and their next door neighbors were common law, married, and it wasn't recognized in Florida. And it was a disaster for the surviving spouse, if you will.
Sure.
She basically had no rights to the house, and it was, rough. It was bad enough that the poor soul lost her husband, so to speak, right? But I also wanted to just point out Mary Sellers from Upper Shore Aging. And if you have any questions that are in the, just get to know Mary. And Mary, if you want to just say anything, and then I know we do have a question from Robert. So, but Mary, just in case you have anything you wanted to share.
Sure. Cindy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I work with guardianship and family caregiver program in Upper Shore. I also wanted to mention the state of Maryland does have a subsidy program for people that are elderly individuals that are in low and moderate senior housing, which includes some assisted livings. This program was developed years ago under public assistance guidelines to help pay for people in what used to be called domiciliary care, that's now known as assisted living care, to provide a small subsidy if they do not qualify for medical assistance based on the long-term health guidelines. You have to document that you need daily help with meals, housekeeping, and some personal care, but this could be maintenance level care. this program used to be capped in each jurisdiction. Now it's capped at the state level, so we have a little more flexibility about moving low-income people that would qualify for this program, helping them obtain a subsidy. We have used it mostly in the Upper Shore area when there's been people that have taken the resources from their home, gone in assisted living, have paid privately for years. They come to a point, they've exhausted all their savings, and their monthly Social Security income is so low, they cannot continue to pay the assisted living rate. Now, I will tell you, the subsidy maxes at $1,000 a month, and you have to be, your income level for a single individual has to be at $3,000 a month, or $3,925 for a couple. There's also an asset cap of $37,000 for of assets for a single person, and $48,900 for a couple. So it is income restricted, but it does provide some basic subsidies for especially people maybe in their 90s that have low Social Security and have used up all their resources for years paying to assisted living, and then cannot be moved to a nursing facility. So it's a little known program, but it's there if you come across a case. If you have a relative in assisted living, they use up all their resources and have very low income, you can look to your local Department of Aging to see if you can qualify for this program. The local Department of Aging does the eligibility determination, and then we seek the payment through the state Maryland Department of Aging. The other thing I would just like to mention briefly is that we do have a family caregiver program that provides small yearly grants to family caregivers. Right now, our max grant is $400 to help purchase some kinds of support services, supplies, medication, equipment, or to help pay an in-home caregiver that might be only needed for a short period of time. There are no strict income guidelines for that program. It's all based on situational need for the caregiver and the client that's being applied for. So those are two Maryland Department plans that you can always call your Department of Aging and seek help with.
Thank you, Mary. There's a question in chat from Robert that says, can you please review what guardianship is again? So if someone might take that on for us.
I can certainly jump in, and anybody else can chime in that wants. Guardianship is the process by which a court determines that an individual is not capable of handling his or her legal or financial affairs. There's actually guardianship of the person, which is appointing somebody to make medical decisions for that person, and guardianship of the property. And that's appointing an individual to make financial decisions. You have to have 2 certificates from medical providers stating that the individual does not have legal capacity. But again, so that is petitioning a court, getting a hearing date, having the court appoint an attorney for the alleged disabled. So it is a very costly and invasive process. Again, we undertake guardianships for clients when they are past the point where they can execute powers of attorney and advance medical directives, or if unfortunately there is turmoil in the family and they can't agree on the care for an individual. So those are usually the 2 instances where we're in court getting guardianship. Does that answer your question?
What other questions do we have? Any other situations that people find themselves with, in trying to plan for the future? what are people facing or hearing in the community these days that we can, help with, especially in this theme of know us before you need us.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Have a patient who is been on disability, and now they have Medicare because they're over 65 for over 30 years. So they have Section 8 housing, and that's the only income they have is their Social Security. How do you handle that situation? Because there's no other money, there's no other income, they have no assets, I guess, unless you're gonna sell their clothes.
And so is the question about how to pay for additional care?
How would you pay for it? They had to go into a nursing home or whatever. How would they get in, or they would just be out?
So if this individual were to qualify medically, so if they were to require nursing facility level of care, it sounds to me like they would qualify financially. That there aren't assets, that he or she likely has assets that are relatively minimal so that they would qualify. The question, probably the harder question, is the concern that this person is declining and needs a higher level of care?
The concern is that the person is probably going to decline. We on it early, but
Yes.
they might need care. And I'm trying to figure out how are we gonna get a level of care for them, since unfortunately they have not made any relationships. They have no children. They've never been married.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just them. And anytime I had called to inquire about some help, they're financially, they don't make enough, they don't get enough of Social Security for the people to even talk to you. They just let you know you got to look for some other help. So
I think that, my recommendation would be to start the conversation, and I'm not sure what kind of documents this person has in place or who the healthcare decision makers are, or powers of attorney, but, to start the conversation early on with a facility that does, that does have Medicaid beds, so that you can get a general understanding of what that transition would look like. Usually they can do an assessment of the individual. That was difficult during COVID, but I think they now have ways of doing that assessment, and that can give you an idea of whether or not that person's going to qualify medically.
okay, and so then if they went into a nursing home or something, and I know you over there asked that, which is their Social Security to the nursing home. But my other question is, you don't have any way of knowing whether a nursing home is going to take care of them or not, because I haven't found, nobody has given me a good recommendation on a nursing home in the Baltimore City, Baltimore County area. So nobody has said that they like where they put their person.
That's a difficult, it is a difficult issue. I always, when I talk to families, I always say, none of us want to be in a nursing home. I think that can probably be universally said. Unfortunately, we have situations where that is the only option. Again, difficult during COVID, but I always tell clients, families, or caregivers, to show up, to physically be present at the nursing homes, show up at odd hours, at different hours, show up on the weekends, show up during holidays. Then you see the different shifts. You don't necessarily want to be the problem family, but you want to be a squeaky wheel. You want to make sure that your loved one's being provided for. So, there's no easy answer to that question, but physical presence of other individuals is important to make sure the person's getting appropriate care. Does anybody else?
Okay, but wait a minute, but then sometimes if you have concerns or complaints, then you are afraid to say anything because they might do something to your loved one while you're not there. So there's no way for you to.
Another difficult, fairly common issue. Yeah.
Thank you.
I would also add that, and it might not be, but if they are having issues and they're given a life-limiting diagnosis, then they can also call hospice, because we have different programs that can help them still in their homes or possibly in the hospice house. It depends on, you know, where they are in the stage of their illness, but they might not need to go to a facility. They might be able to have hospice services. Am I correct, Molly?
Yes, we're able to provide hospice wherever someone's going to call home. So a lot of times if anyone's thinking about would hospice maybe be an organization that could help me care for my loved one, we're always able to come out and answer questions and help you understand all of the different settings that we can provide support in and what that help looks like, so that you can make a good decision on maybe what the best fit might be if we are an organization that could help you.
Because people only think it's for the last couple of days of your life. Sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's you know, shorter, and sometimes it's longer. So sometimes the care that they can receive can enhance the quality of their life in whatever facility that they're in.
Ma'am, you mentioned you mentioned Baltimore. Are you living in Baltimore yourself?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you so much. The power of webinars, I love it. You know, because we can reach a lot of folks. So we would certainly be able to help you find, you know, a hospice provider in your area. And there may be more than one in Baltimore because it's such a big, dense area. But on the one spectrum of hospice care is many times there's palliative care programs where if your loved one, if you're the person you're caring for that I know you love, right, and you're concerned about, has a chronic disease, you know, they may be able to tap into, you know, another lens from another physician and or social worker that can be, you know, in the beginning of the process, if you're seeing a little bit of decline or some things like that. So you may want to explore some palliative care program. And a lot of times there's other organizations, like on the shore, we have Partners in Care, which is a group that is a group of volunteers that will, you know, do a little bit of touching base with folks, you know, kind of trying to fill in some gaps where this loved one doesn't have a family member right on board. So you know, something like that as well. There's some volunteer organizations. In Maryland, though, there is a MAP the Maryland Access Point is your kind of go-to, I believe the phone number, Mary, is right? Is it 211? You can call 211 and get connected to Maryland MAP.
I believe
Yeah,
so.
Maryland Maps and Department of Aging are missing in action since COVID. You can't.
Oh, okay. Well,
so right now is not. Wouldn't need it right now, but that's what you call them. But right now, it's so hard to Department of Aging is shut down. They send you the maps.
They're getting it. You're almost there. But at least you're going to know them before you need them. I love that you're thinking ahead. And thank you for this thoughtful question.
Cindy, if I could jump in, this is Mary. I know it's difficult to get through of people at state levels. She might try calling the senior center closest to her. There should be somebody, even though the agency is shut down, taking MAP calls in her jurisdiction. And what she wants to do is get her friend that's disabled on the community options waiver wait list. That's what the MAP is all about, getting the person on the wait list. So when they become disabled enough, they might have some option of some long-term care services in their house paid for by state Medicaid. So, and those financial eligibility requirements are based on the financial eligibility requirements for nursing home care. So that's something she certainly should pursue. And if she doesn't get anybody at her local senior center, she can call the Maryland Department of Aging and they will refer her call over to someone. There's still someone answering a phone at the Maryland Department of Aging when you call.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. You know, I just have a question for Lee and for Debbie. You know, in terms of, I think we're going to see, you know, more individuals who are no longer able to work, you know, but we're planning on working. And, you know, if you just speak to maybe you know, I imagine that some people may eventually benefit from something like disability benefits. And, you know, should they expect to be rejected, you know, if they have it, you know, and should they be thinking about hiring an attorney? You know, I'm not sure if there's any, if you haven't had any experience with that.
Debbie, do you want to handle that one, or you? Okay, so, you know, I think sort of two things to look at with that. You know, I do not do disability claims, but there are attorneys that that specialize in that area, you know, and that you would, I think, would likely want to get advice from, or at least consult with. You know, the other thing to make sure you're aware of, as Debbie said in the presentation, was what kind of, you know, short-term or long-term disability does your company offer, you know, and that those are really important to make sure that you get, you know, the timing right, the documentation appropriately, depending on how big your company is, you know, communicating with the HR department, documenting it, you know, appropriately. There's time periods and notices that you have to give. And so you want to make sure that you meet all of those deadlines appropriately. You know, I certainly do have several clients that had long-term disability through their work, and they were able to use those, and, you know, essentially saved their families, because otherwise they, you know, they weren't going to have income, and they were not yet receiving Social Security and other things. So, you know, Social Security disability is, it's certainly a specialized area, and there are, you know, we refer people up to an attorney up in Baltimore that handles a lot of those types of cases.
That's just good to know. You know, we hope you never need to know, but it's good to know that the resources are out there for sure. And I know some of these, you know, we've talked a little bit about long-term care insurance, and the premiums can be very steep. I don't know, Debbie, if you mentioned it in the presentation, can you at least write off the premium in some cases, you know, as a quote unquote, you know, tax benefit or tax write-off?
So basically, long-term care premiums are a part of your, I have a persistent caller here. Sorry. Long-term care premiums are considered a medical deduction at the individual level. So you're looking at, are all of your medical expenses sufficient to create a deduction, meaning more than 10% of your income? If you are fortunate enough to buy the insurance while you're working, and you're a business owner typically of a C corporation, that is the only entity it's deductible to. So it becomes and I have some business owners that are buying their long-term care through a C corporation, typically with a 10-pay program. So they finish it in 10 years, it's fully paid for. But your average consumer is going to be left with taking it as a medical deduction. So it is, and it is age-based. So the sooner you buy long-term care insurance, it's like whole life insurance, the better it is, price-wise.
A lot
Um,
to think about.
It is a lot to think about, and it's been a really informative session. I can't begin to tell you guys how much I've gleaned off of it. Such great information, seriously. And Lee and Debbie, thank you so much for all of your expertise, and Mary for all the information that you were able to give us that, you know, we would not have had. So we really do appreciate it. If there aren't any other questions, I think we're going to go ahead and end the
And
session.
thank you very much. Thank you, Leslie, for
Absolutely.
organizing us, you know, and keeping
Yes.
us on track. Just thank you for joining us, everyone.
Yeah, very much so. And number 3, June 16th is about caregivers.
Thank
So
you. That's right.
make sure you guys tune in. That's going to be really, really good about learning about caregivers and what everybody has to offer on that. So please tune back in and bring your friends with you. All
Yep,
right.
third Wednesday, 11
Thank
o'clock.
you, Cindy. Thank you,
Take
Leslie,
care, everybody.
Lee,
Stay
Debbie,
well.
everybody. Thank you, Laura.
Appreciate
Bye,
your
guys.
time.
Bye, thank you.
You.